Hi everyone, this video is recorded in Taipei, so new hotel, clean place, reasonably priced. This is the final leg of my month-long stay abroad, and this journey is probably the second longest trip I've ever done. Back in a previous life, like 15-20 years ago, I was in this band, and one of the tours we did was a 5 week US tour. But other than that, this is the longest away from home I've ever been. Certainly the longest I've been away since the kids came along. So I won't lie, there's been some fatigue and homesickness setting in these past few days as I've been, attending a conference while simultaneously trying to do a bunch of regular work stuff that's been piling up. So, spoiler alert, I'm really looking forward to start my long journey home day after tomorrow. Tomorrow though, I'll have a day off here in Taipei and do some touristy stuff. Yeah, so speaking of spoilers, that's today's topic, and no, I won't be getting into any specific spoilers for Malasan or any other series really, except for some really old ones you probably know of by now. I'll address my thoughts on spoilers in general, and of course a bit in particular as it relates to the Malasan Book of the Fallen. And spoiler alert, people are too spoiler sensitive these days, and that's my key point. You are spoiled if you feel satisfied and immediately turn off this video. You may well be proving my point. So, spoilers. I think that if the entire experience of a book or a movie or a TV show hinges on a singular surprise aspect, something that is of such importance that knowing it before going in ruins every other aspect, then maybe that's just lazy storytelling. Could also be some sort of effect of unrealistic expectations as well. Can you really go into something completely blank? So I'm going to give you some examples here of some things that I've been spoiled on over the years. So I'm a Star Wars fan, pretty average Star Wars fan, but I used to be a huge Star Wars fan when I was a kid. We got a VCR quite early on, and one of the very first movies we recorded from TV back in 1984, I was 5 at the time, was Star Wars A New Hope. And from there on, all I wanted for Christmases and birthdays for years were Star Wars action figures. And He-Man action figures, but He-Man wasn't on TV, so I had no idea it was a TV show until years after I had stopped playing with them. Anyway, some way along the line, my mom mentioned that Darth Vader was Luke Skywalker's dad. Did I just spoil that for you? Well, if so, consider yourself collateral damage. So anyway, my mom didn't have a concept of spoilers. When she picks up a new book, she starts reading the final page. And she didn't want to ruin anything for me. She just wanted to add some more awesome to this universe that I was so into. A bit later on, maybe I was 7 years old, the local theater in our little town showed The Empire Strikes Back, and my mom took me and a friend of mine to see it. Did my knowledge on the upcoming daddy issues take away from my experience? No, I was thrilled to see it play out. So, fast forward, I was 11 or 12 when Twin Peaks aired. Me and my mom saw every episode, both the first time around and then the reruns a few years later. Now, a friend of mine, who happens to be the same one that I saw Empire Strikes Back with, but that's besides the point, had somehow gotten wind of who Laura Palmer's killer was. I guess the show aired in Sweden a couple of months at least behind the US schedule, so I'm guessing one of his older brothers somehow had stumbled across the information in some American magazine and had told his little brother just for the heck of it, who then, of course, had to ruin the experience for me, or at least so he thought. And with some glee, I want to remember. So anyway, did that ruin the experience for me? Well, no. Well, I kind of thought that it had, right? Oh, I mean, I was 11, so I was a bit upset. But when I watched it, I also realized that if you have seen Twin Peaks, you know that knowing the killer by name doesn't come close to telling the full story, right? There's other things going on behind the scenes leading up to Laura Palmer's death. Also, I have a sneaking suspicion David Lynch wouldn't himself would probably not say that it is the whodunit that is the key to Twin Peaks. But anyway, a final example then, the movie Dogville by Lars von Trier. At this point I was about 20 years old, I don't remember exactly. So the movie Dogville by Lars von Trier, starring Nicole Kidman. Had bought tickets. I was really looking forward to it, and I read an article on the movie in the local newspaper on the same day I was going to see the movie. Thinking it was an ordinary review and not this more in-depth think piece, I read the article and it spelled out the entire ending in great detail. So, did I throw away the tickets and stayed at home sulking? No, I did not. But surely I must have gone and hate watched the movie that I obviously could not enjoy, knowing how it would end. No, I loved it. It's a 5 out of 5. You should pause this video right now, watch that movie instead, or even better, read a synopsis on Wikipedia and then watch the movie, so you have everything spoiled before going in. A bonus example, just so I can brag about it. I did not get the ending of the Sixth Sense spoiled. The horror movie with Bruce Willis, directed by M. Night Shyamalan. So I didn't get that ending spoiled, but as I watched it, I figured out the twist already in the cold open where Bruce Willis's character is shot. And maybe it did spoil the movie a bit. I consider it to be a good movie, but I wasn't as over the moon about it as many others. Speaking of others, The Others, another Nicole Kidman movie named The Others. Much better movie, working with similar themes. Just throwing it out there. And speaking of Shyamalan movies, spoiler alert, he will probably be mentioned in an upcoming video, by the way. Speaking of Shyamalan, I enjoyed The Village more than The Sixth Sense, maybe because that movie's twist wasn't spoiled, or I didn't realize it until it was presented on screen. And a final note on Shyamalan, his movie Signs, probably one of the 3 worst movies I've ever seen, along with Le Pacte du Loup, or Brotherhood of the Wolves in English, and I want to say Itchy the Killer, also pretty bad. Yeah, anyway, okay, so to reiterate my thoughts on the matter, if a story hinges on one single surprise element, getting that spoiled will probably ruin it a bit. But that's not your fault for getting things spoiled, or it's not on whoever spoiled it for you, it's on the author for being a bit lazy, I would say. Let's talk a bit about one of my favorite book series of all time, George R.R. Martin's unfinished masterpiece, A Song of Ice and Fire. So the first book, Game of Thrones. Spoiler now for a book released in 1996 that also led to one of the most talked about TV shows of the century. So, in that first book, the character we are set up to believe is the main character is beheaded. And I still remember reading it. It was in April in 2006. I was on that tour that I mentioned in the beginning of the video. Before a show in Austin, we went for a swim at a place called Barton Springs. It was really hot. Not the springs, the weather. The springs were very cool. That's why we went there. So I didn't swim very much because I was sitting in the shade under a tree reading this book that I couldn't get away from this book. I was glued to it. So there I was reading while the rest of the band jumped around in the water, and I had to, and I read the chapter, and I thought to myself, I didn't really get how he managed to get out of this one. I better read it again. So I read the chapter again. It's almost as if the author wants me to believe that he actually didn't get out of this. How did he manage not to be beheaded? Even though it explicitly says he's being beheaded, but I couldn't take that information in my just didn't compute. So I read it a third time, and I was oh, but yeah, blew my mind, severely blew my mind. But here's the thing, though. George R. R. Martin isn't lazy. I know a lot of you are frustrated by him never finishing his books, but that doesn't mean he doesn't work on it. I think he works on it really, really hard, and maybe a bit too hard. I think that's his problem. I think he wants to nail it down perfectly. No, he's not lazy. Because even though, of course, it's very important for the plot, but it wasn't the only event that carried the narrative along. This was not George R. R. Martin saying, and now this happened, haha. It was Martin telling the reader, I'm going to tell this story my way, and I don't care what you think a fantasy author can or cannot do. So you better buckle up. Okay, so Malazan. What about it? I have on occasion tried to start conversations online on this topic with other Malazan fans, with various results. You see, it is my belief that there is no such single event in the Malazan Book of the Fallen that would ruin the overall experience. It isn't that kind of book. It isn't written in that kind of way. The people who are very spoiler sensitive, of course, won't listen, because they will just, put their hands over their ears and sing as soon as you try to mention or discuss the book in any aspect. So, no, if you get things spoiled, I don't think the entire series is ruined for you. On the contrary, in my first read of the series, I frequently used the excellent Malazan wiki, even though it wasn't nearly as complete at the time as it is now. It's become even better than it was when I read it. I used the awesome PowerPoint presentation that is out there. Once again, not entirely sure if they were around when I read it the first time, but I just want to mention it there because I think they are so good. But what I did use a lot on my first read were the chapter summaries in Tor.com's reread of The Fallen. These books are dense, and as I mentioned earlier, I read them too fast. So often I had two options. Either I use internet resources to explain a specific thing or an entire chapter, or I could just give up and quit the series. And I'm very glad that I choose going for the internet resources, because otherwise I wouldn't have fully appreciated what turned out to be my favorite series of books of all time. Yes, things got spoiled in the process. There is a death of a prominent character in Memories of Ice, and I'm sorry to spoil the fact that a prominent character dies in a military fantasy series. Once again, that death is still a minor thing in the grander context of the series. The brilliance of Malazan isn't caught up in the plot twists or jump scares. It's in the writings, it's in the interactions between characters. I got a character's death spoiled, but not the exquisite build-up towards that scene where the character dies. Also, there are so many things going on that accidentally getting one plot point ruined while searching the web for an explanation of something, that's marginal. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter, because Erickson isn't lazy. Another random thought on the matter. Malazan is a history of this empire at this point in time, and we know it is written as a history within the world, and the big mystery isn't who's gonna die and who is secretly someone else or something like that. Big mystery is who is writing this history, what is the purpose of it, and who is the intended audience. And that's not something you'll get spoiled when you look up a certain character, for example. I like to compare the 10 big books as kind of to the Roman Empire, a history over the Roman Empire. I think maybe it was Erickson himself that who compared it to the overall structure to histories of the Second World War, where you need to go from one theater to another and not necessarily in chronological order in order to fully explain what's going on. So the way I approached it, and this is my personal approach, is that if I read a book about a large-scale historical conflict, I'll constantly be on Wikipedia to see what happened to this general, or what's the background behind the conflict between nation A and B with regards to area C, and why the inhabitants of C called upon D for assistance, and so on. And and since this is a history within the world, I kind of treated it as such. Anyway, just a thought. And yeah, so now I'm doing a reread, and that has to be kind of the pinnacle of having things spoiled, right? So if you're spoiler sensitive, you would probably not reread anything. If I'm now, I know I'm simplifying things. I'm just trying to make a point here. So I know all the major plot points. I've forgotten a lot of things, of course. There are 10 very big books, but still, the overall plot, the things that are going on, I got that in my head already going into my reread. I know where the major characters end up, and despite having everything spoiled in that manner, I've so far enjoyed every single book of the series more than I did the first time around. I did post in a large Malazan related Facebook group once, asking opinions on Malazan and spoilers, and stating my opinion in the matter, kind of a condensed version of what I've been talking about at length here. And the most common response I got was, "Hey, this is a spoiler-free forum, and so it should remain," or "Please read the guidelines, this forum strives to be welcoming to all readers." Okay, so mind you, I did not suggest changing any forum policies. I did not claim that I wished to publish massive spoilers for the series. My arguments were in line with what I just told you, and I was a bit disappointed that the most vocal comments I got were from folks that obviously hadn't read my post. But hey, that's the internet for you. What can you do? Can't do anything about that, I would guess. Anyway, I've been talking too long already. I got a mule to kill. I'll see you later.